Hello, everybody, and welcome to 38 Weeks to Go, your weekly podcast about fantasy football. I am your host, Nash, and let's get into it. With a game week average of 40, how did you do? Me? It was one of those ones where you wonder, why am I still playing this game? Is this fun? Am I having fun? No, I'm not having fun. This sucks. I got 31 points. It was such a disaster. Pep did his roulette. My defender came on, got a -1. Saka started off the bench. Foden got subbed at halftime. It was just a disaster. Haaland did nothing. Ekitike did nothing. Calvert Lewin did nothing. Rodgers did nothing. Wilson did nothing. Henderson conceded. If it wasn't for Gabriel and Mukiele, I think I might even have got another 20. So, for the last 3 game weeks, the average score has been going down. So what contributed this time round? First of all, it started off at the very beginning of the game week. Manchester United versus Manchester City. A lot of us had 3 or even 4 players from Manchester City. What a disaster that was. What a complete disaster. Carrick had the new manager bounce. It's not clear whether Pep and Man City, with their 100 games this season, I don't know what happened. They were just outclassed. They were second best, even third best. They were just not in the game. If you didn't any better, you'd have thought Man United were playing a newly promoted side. Those players turned up. I feel bad for Amorim. It feels like they were against him, or maybe he just didn't understand what he had on him. But let's see what happens once the manager bounce fades. So right then, Manchester City assets dead. So you have your Haaland captain, nothing. Foden gets a substitute at halftime. You have Semenyo, nothing. And if you're like me and you have O'Reilly, he comes on, gets a yellow card, they concede -1. So if you bet on the Chelsea-Brentford game, you might have been over there thinking, okay, Thiago has been doing well this season. Why not? Brentford blank. So if you have him, Mr. Kelleher or Collins, nothing. And then Chelsea, you needed João Pedro. And where did João Pedro come from? Who knows? He had been the lap playing this whole time. And then Palmer finally scores after like 100 game weeks. So I'm not so sure about, apart from the dead teams, how many people had him. And then you go, Leeds 1, Fulham 0. You're like, okay. I can see Dominic Calvert-Lewin doing something. He does nothing. Aronson, he does nothing. Then you tell yourself, Raul Jimenez has been scoring for the last 3 or 4 game weeks. So has Harry Wilson. They both do nothing. So none of the popular Fulham and Leeds assets score. Then you have Burnley versus Liverpool. A lot of people thought this would be a clean sheet. A lot of people thought Ekitike would score. In fact, this was the only joy I had this weekend, that Ekitike got as much as Haaland. Because I was gambling between them. I was just like, who should I take? It seems like they were both the wrong answer. So and then if you had Soboslai, he misses a penalty. Then of course nobody's really having Burnley assets. Unless you're also a dead team and you have Wirtz, not too many people had him. And if you are looking for an assist, it's Curtis Jones. So nothing. Clean sheet, nothing. And then you have Spurs versus West Ham. At this point, I'm beginning to believe that either Romero and Van der Ven are just 2 of the top scorers in that team. So of course with Spurs, you never know what you're going to get. And this was just a game that went on to prove that. Now, Romero ended up scoring for Spurs, which was great if you have him. Somerville and Wilson scored for West Ham. Not too many of us have him. A lot of us would have had Bowen, and he did nothing. And then you go into the Sunderland Crystal Palace game hoping for a clean sheet. And then what happens? Nothing. Roofs concedes. At least Mukiele gets an assist, which helps some of us, especially if you're me and he came off the bench. But then now Gay has gone, so Crystal Palace defense is now in tatters without Munoz now. So Yeremi scores. How many of us have Yeremi Pino? Not too many. Enzo Lefebvre? I don't know. Robbie? I don't know. So at least Mukiele had an assist and that really helped us. And then we go into the Arsenal Forest game. And by this point, they know that Manchester City have fumbled. And so you think Arsenal are going to go ham. And you also think that having owned Saka, that he will play and he will destroy them. Game ends 0-0. So If you have an Arsenal defender, you're solid. But if you have anything else, you're cooked. And of course, if you have the Nottingham Forest defense and keeper, you're set as well. Because Sells got like 10 or something. Arsenal did try, but Forest were just ready. And Gyökeres Martinelli just couldn't capitalize on the chances. And then you tell yourself, you know what? Wolves, Newcastle. I'm going to bet on Newcastle. You tell yourself, Bruno Guimaraes, Voltemada, easy peasy. Nobody scores in this game. Wolves extend their unbeaten run to 5 or 6 games now. And then you say, okay, Aston Villa are playing Everton. I know Watkins and Rodgers, who have been doing, well, Watkins has been great. Rodgers, meh. You know something good is coming. What ends up happening? Everton beat them, with Barry scoring the only goal of the game. So just like, oh my goodness, what's happening? What's happening? And then, of course, Everton's defense is the one to bank on. Brighton versus Bournemouth. At this point, you're hoping for something. Just anything if you have any of these players. But then it ends in a draw with Kostulas and Tavernier doing the scoring. And no obvious candidates really took hold of the weekend. And it will also be reflected when we go over the round points. So for the many of us who are following I'm doing the air quotes, template, it was a disaster over game week. So when it comes to the marquee game of the weekend, it is just the Manchester Derby. Manchester United took on Manchester City at Old Trafford. This game, by halftime, I was even messaging in one of my friends' groups. I was asking them, guys, unless Manchester United make a mistake, I don't know how Manchester City will score. And then Manchester United score. Manchester United have 3 goals disallowed. They hit the post twice. It was an absolute dominant performance. The most dominant performance I've seen from Manchester United in a very long time, especially against top opposition. It was a kind where if you're a Manchester United fan, you're only believing in Carrick. You're done. You're ready. Give him the full contract. You're sold. It was a vintage Manchester United performance. Man City, on the other hand, I don't know if they were thinking about the Champions League, which is happening tonight, or I don't know what. They were not prepared for Carrick and Manchester United in any shape, way, or form. And the funniest thing is, before that, the last 2 games looked impressive, but they were a total shit show. Haaland barely had a chance. Foden was removed at halftime. The counters were just too much. Alain made a mistake. He got substituted. It was a disaster of a game. It was a disaster of a game. From a Manchester City perspective. If you're a Manchester United fan, you must be thinking Europe is a possibility at this point. Mbeumo opened the scoring after a lovely pass from Bruno Fernandes. And then Cunha came on, and he came on to devastating effect. He was so vital. He could have had 2 assists. He had just 1 assist, but he was immense. You could feel him every minute he was on the pitch. Honestly, it just seems like Manchester United have options now. It almost looks like Carrick knows what to do with the players he has, which doesn't make sense because you'd think Amorim would know what to do with the players that he has. Like, for example, Sesko wasn't the right player for this game. If you saw how Manchester won this game, Sesko wasn't the right player, but Mbeumo was. And then Cunha was the right person to bring on. It was a perfect debut for him. Anyway, like I said, Mbeumo scored. Dorgu scored off an assist from Cunha. Fernandes and Cunha had the assists. Dorgu had the 3 bonus points. Fernandes had 2. And Mbeumo had 1. And I know Dorgu is like 3rd on many of your benches, so I'm sorry for that. And of course, Manchester United defenders were on people's benches. There was no real high-scoring game because you can't count 2-1 as a high-scoring game. So I'm not even going to talk about the high-scoring game of the weekend because that doesn't count. When it comes to the most disappointing game, there's so many contenders. Liverpool 1, Burnley 1, Forest 0, Arsenal 0, Aston Villa 0, Everton 1, Wolves 0, Newcastle 0. I would go for Newcastle. Not because the other ones aren't disappointments, but because Wolves are dead last. And Newcastle are in the top half of the table. They are the better team. They should have won this game. They had chances to win. They couldn't take them. They created the better chances. Bruno Guimaraes had chances to win the game, but it just didn't come together. It just did not. The game ended 0-0, and Like I've been saying recently, Wolves are not easy to beat. Mr. Hall got the 3 bonus points along with Thiago. Jose Sa and Mosquera got 1. When it comes to round points, Sanchez was a top performing goalkeeper with 11 points, followed by Pickford and Sells, who both got 10. Then you have Jose Sa, who got 7. Then Raya, Dallo, Lamens, and Pope were tied for 5th with 6 points each. When it comes to defenders, Dorgu was a top performing defender with 15 points. O'Brien had 9, Justin had 9, Hall had 9, and Thiago had 9. So many defenders got clean sheets, as you could tell. When it comes to midfielders, Wirtz had 10, along with Bruno Fernandes and Somerville. Edwards, Palmer, Jeremy, Bumo, and Mateus Fernandes had 9 apiece. When it comes to attackers, forwards rather, Brobbey was a top performing striker with 9. Kostulas from Brighton, who scored a lovely overhead kick, had 8. João Pedro and Barry each had 8 as well. And rounding up the top 5 was Mecha, who had 7. So, as you can tell, it didn't feel like there were many points to be gotten this week. And the top performer was Dorgu from Manchester United. Let's look at some stats generated from this weekend. Arsenal have stopped their opponents from having a shot on target in 5 Premier League matches this season. Even with 16 games remaining, this is the most by a team in a season of any Europe's Big 5 leagues across the last 5 seasons. Great defense. In this past game week, there were only 14 goals. That is the fewest on a Saturday with 9 or more games in the competition since 15-16 October in 2022, where there were 13 goals in 9 games. This was also the first time since May 4th to 6th, that game week, in 2018, that the Premier League's top 3 teams have all failed to score in the same match day. Arsenal, Man City, and Villa failed to score. Wolves' 0-0 draw with Newcastle was a 17th goalless draw of this Premier League season, and this is the 218th match of the season. And this has already exceeded the 24-25 campaign last season, which had 16 0-0 matches in 380 games played. Dominic Calvert-Lewin won the Player of the Month. He is also the first player to win the Premier League Player of the Month while playing for a newly promoted club since Timo Pukki did it in 2019. There have been new players added to Fantasy, and these are their prices. Castellanos from West Ham, 5.5 is a forward, along with Pablo Felipe, 5.5. Pascal Gross from Brighton, 5.5. Conor Gallagher from Spurs, 5.5. Alisson, midfielder Aston Villa, 5.0. Toth to Bournemouth, midfield, 5.0. Jocelyn Tarby, Sunderland midfielder, 5.0. Fraser Foster, Bournemouth goalkeeper, 4.0. For the 3rd week in a row, Gabriel is the most brought in player, which hasn't been done for 7 years in FPL. So, well done to him. It's clear that we believe in him in Arsenal. When it comes to DEFCON points, Ghana from Everton had the most with 29. Second place was Cook from Bournemouth with 18. That's a huge gap. Fernandes also had 18. Richards and Souček had 17 DEFCON points, and that's a top 5. When it comes to top transfers brought in this game week, Bruno, 330,000 have brought him in. Bumo, 157,000 have brought him in. Dorgu, 143,000 have brought him in. Thiago, 120,000 have brought him in. Semenyo, 113,000 have brought him in. When it comes to the top transfers out, Foden, 326,000 have removed him. Gay, 167,000 have removed him. Saka, 118,000 have removed him. Shirky, 105,000 have removed him. Rogers, 101,000 have removed him. So you can see people have lost faith in Shirky, and Saka's inability to play every game is working against him. And Rogers has just done nothing. The highest points this week was 111, got to you by the team name Habariako. Now, you know this thing is always wild. This guy, Captain Dorgu, got 30 points. Alisson was in goal, 2 points. Dorgu, 30. Hall, 9. Thiago, 9. Chalobah, 8. Timber, 5. Palmer, 9. Fernandes, 10. Bumo, 9. Saka, 1. Raul, 2. On the bench, Sanchez, 11. Ekitike, 2. Wilson, 2. Calvert, Lewin, 2. And that's how they got 111 points. In our group, Smachacham Kundi Matata was the highest points getter with 70 points. Can tell it was a tough one. Remember, 40 was the weekly average. Mr. Smachacham used his bench boost, which came into great effect because on his bench he had Bruno, Dorgu, Raul, and Dubravka, which was a mighty 25 points. I got 31. Goodness. So 25 points on his bench. Haaland was his captain, gave him 4. Thiago gave him 2. Foden and Semenyo gave him 1 and 2 respectively. Enzo gave him 6. Rice gave 3. Mukiele 6. Chalobah 8. Gabriel 8. Senesi 3. Henderson 2. And that's how Smachacham got 70 points. When it comes to the top 5, Smachacham had 70. Number 2 was 59 points from Tim Odera. So you see that drop off is real. Then number 3 and number 4 was George Ota and Nikola Mislenovic, who had 58 points. And number 5 was a tie. Sidik Suleiman got 57, along with Gwan Kimko, Derek Mwangi, and Mike Mbugwa. On the other end, even though I thought I had done a mighty nothing, you know, they always say there are greater and lesser persons than yourself. And that also is valid when it comes to points. Omar Gillo, manager of Ajab FC, is the lowest point getter this week with 19 points. Now, this is a set and forget team. In goal, Henderson 2, Van de Ven 0, Bogle 6, I don't even know who Bogle is, Bradley 0, Saka captain 2, Elanga 1, Semenyo 2, Salah 0, Calvert Lewin 2, Mateta 2, Voltemada 2. It's not an inspiring team. Murunga Manyara, 22 points. Kevin Wachalimu, 23 points, along with Ramon Poles. And in number 5, we have a tie with Mark Lukwago and Aboki Jr., who both have 25 points. When it comes to most points lost on the bench, Melita Elvis has 31 points on the bench. Dubravka 5, Rhys James 7, Cunha 4, Dorgu 15. And that's how they got 31 points. Literally my points. And to make it worse, they only had 43 points. So that's a tough one. Number 2 was Moses Chege, 29 points. Number 3, Melvin Astakanya, 25 points. Johnny Watson, number 4, 23 points on the bench. Charles Cadavillis, Sir Carlos Wenger, and Patrick Kaiser have 22 points on the bench. When it comes to managers with teams with the most goal scorers, this week it is very low. It is just Tim Odera and Eddie Olang, who have 3 different goal scorers. That's low. Last week, I think we had 7. When it comes to the team with the best midfield, Tim Odera, he had a midfield that delivered 29 points, and that was the best of the week. When it comes to defense, Smachacham's defense gained 47 points. Mind you, the weekly average was 40. So this is an exceptional game week in terms of defense for him. Well done. When it comes to the most transfers made, Mike Mbogwa, manager of Mike's team, made the most transfers, 12. Arnoldinho Arnold, Christy Cadavillis, Viba of Naik, and Victor Nyabola round up the top 5 with 5 transfers made this week. When it comes to the best transfer outcomes, meaning that from the transfers you made, you gained more points than had you left your team the way it was last week. Chris Masika, 35 points. Anthony Koila, 14 points. Otio Mondi, 13 points. John Mangemi, 11 points. And in number 5, we have Hector Rembo and Identity, 10 points each. When we come to the flip side of that, we have disappointing transfer outcomes. Mike Mbogwa, of course, who's made many transfers, is number 1, and they have lost 45 points. They're 45 points worse by making the transfers that they did. Victor Nyabola, 21 points. Caleb and Peter Dennis, 17 points. And in number 5, we have Boneji, 13 points worse off than had they done nothing. When it comes to the team with the highest team value, Suraj Baigane and Collins Kogi are tied at number 1 with a team value of 105.4. Keep it up, guys. On the flip side, Angola Nayo Kijane Mama is really going for broke. Their team value is 96.5. When it comes to highest change in team value, Akil Hazmi has gained 0.9 million in the bank. And on the other end, John Mongemi has lost 0.6 of his team value. 0.6 million, that is. When it comes to the best differential pick, Dorgu, of course, had the highest points this week and was chosen by 3% of us this week. Second was Sanchez, who was chosen by 7% of us. He had 11 points. Number 3 was Sells, who was chosen by 10% of us. By 2% of us, and he had 10 points. Number 3 was Pickford, who also had 10 points and was chosen by 6% of us. Verts was chosen by 7% of us, and he had 10 points as well. And that rounds up the top 5. When it comes to captain choices, 119 of us chose Haaland to be our captain. 15 of us chose Ekitike to be our captain. 7 of us chose Saka. 6 of us chose Rice. 4 of us chose Bruno Guimaraes, Palmer. 3 of us chose Voltemada, Foden, Salah, Semenyo. 2 of us chose Gyökeres, Wood, Sheki, Mateta, Thiago, Watkins, Rogers, and Gabriel. When it comes to most unique captain choices, 1 manager each chose Calvert, Lewin, Thiago, Hudson-Odoi, Gordon, Pope, Grealish, Gakpo, Verts, Raul, Wilson, João Pedro, and Mbumo. When it comes to overall rank, Nikola Mislenovic jumped globally 681,000 positions. Victor Nyabola dropped 623,000 positions globally. When it comes to our league table, Gen Z architect Sudik S. Suleiman jumped 19 positions, while on the other end, Mark Lukwago dropped 12 positions. So I guess we did so badly that the drop wasn't too bad for most of us. When it comes to streak of green arrows, Thagana Gaveru has been on the rise and he has been going up for 7 game weeks in a row. Please teach me your ways, because I, your host, are the leader this week, along with Mark Lukwago, dropped. It's very painful. 6 weeks in a row I've been doing nothing. I've been doing nothing and I just need help. I need to do something. I've 6 weeks in a row, me and Mark Lukwago, we've just done nothing. So we're hoping to do better. I can't believe at one point I was like number 15 or number 16. And now, let's just not talk about it. I'm in page 2. At the top of our league table, there has been some movement finally. Leon Mortier has taken charge of the table. He has 1329 points. In number 2, Arnold Midunga has been deposed. He has 1327 points. Number 3 is Charles Cadevillis, who has risen up, 1323 points. Alan Muchangi, 1320, number 4. Papi Chulo, 1311. Mathengani Kihoro, 1305. Jeffrey Jeremy, 1295. John Mongemi, 1280. King Kev, 17, 1278. And in number 10, we have 1273, Franklin Asiema. So, number 1 has 1329. 100 positions below that is Aflagani, Royal Madrid FC. Number 31, that's where 1229 is. So if you're between those two numbers, well done, keep it up. you can get to number 1 very easily. It's just 100 points, 2 weeks. You got this. At the bottom of the table, we have Mark Moura, who has 521 points. Don Clinton has 712 points. Murunga Manyara has 772 points. Mike Mbogo has 787 points. And Tim Odera has 862 points. And that is the bottom 5 of our table. Number 1 in the world is Matty C's 5'3s. They have 56 points this week. And they have 1492 points, which is 170 above our number 1. So it goes to show that there's still room for improvement for us to compete with the global elite. He had 56 points this week. In goal, Raya, 6 points. Gabriel, 8. Tarkowski, 8. Thiago, 9. Saka, 1. Rogers, 2. Foden, 1. Soberslai, 0. Haaland, 4. Thiago, 2. Calvert, Lewin, 2. Mukiele, 6. Wilson, 2. Dubravka, 5. And this is because they used their bench boost. When looking at the next game week, the first thing to note is that their European fixtures this week, midweek fixtures, which means do not make any knee-jerk decisions just yet. Hold on and see, especially if you're going to be choosing players playing this weekend. Now, having said that, the main observation I have ahead of this game week is that whatever the template is, it is broken. If you think Saka, he didn't play. Haaland doesn't score. He has scored once in 6 game weeks. So for the people like us who have been captaining him, we have been losing except once. Thiago is random. Ekitike is random. And so I would encourage you to break the mold. Whatever you've been doing, but unless it's working, I would say, for example, try not to captain Haaland this week. I know they're playing Wolves and it's tempting and it's obvious. But he's been obvious for 6 weeks and he has only scored in 1. So is that really obvious? Kicking us off in the early kickoff will be West Ham versus Sunderland. West Ham and Sunderland both got great victories over the past game week and will be looking to do more. Now, they will be having their African players back, which will make them a much more imposing threat over this game week. Now, Sunderland in particular have had many African players go to AFCON. But now that they're back, things will be changing. I'm wishing that we had our 5 transfers back. Now, the last time out when they played, Sunderland hammered West Ham 3-0. I still think Sunderland are the better team, and I believe that they will be favoured for this encounter. The only difference is that it will be hard to know who will score. Now, if you're looking at West Ham, I would say Somerville, Mateus Fernandes, and if you were looking at Sunderland, I would say Enzo Lefebvre, Mukiele, and Brobby. Burnley take on Spurs. Now, Spurs will be playing midweek, so keep an eye out for what will happen and check out if their players will make it through in case you want to choose one of their players. Spurs were beaten last time out and they'll be looking to do better. Burnley got a credible draw with Liverpool and we'll be looking for a similar or even better performance. If anything, Tottenham are easier opposition. Now, the last time they played, it was a complete and decisive victory to Tottenham. Now, of course, Spurs fans will be hoping for the same. Should you believe that to be true, hoping everything goes well, I believe that Odobert and Romero will be your best bet. And of course, you know how this guy does his rotation. You're hoping that maybe, well, you just don't know. So that's what I'll say on that side. On the other end, I will say Ugochukwu, Edwards, and Broja. Fulham take on Brighton. Fulham were beaten at the last minute by Leeds, while Brighton got a last-minute draw. So they'll be looking to change their fortunes in this fixtures. Their head-to-head is interesting. There are 2 draws, 2 wins for Fulham and 1 win for Brighton. Now, Brighton tends to draw at home or win. When Fulham at home, they win. So, I will be favoring Fulham in this encounter. Should you believe that? Leno should be in your radar. Wilson and Jimenez. On the other end, I would say Mitoma, Minte, and Van Hecke. Man City take on Wolves. Man City, as I'm recording this, have been beaten by Bodo Glimt in the Champions League. I'm wondering if this is the beginning of a slump, although having looked at that lineup, it wasn't their strongest lineup. Pep doesn't have a team B anymore. He just has a team A and then it's like team C. Because it's just team A and then kids. It reminds me of Real Madrid of you have the Zidanes and the Pavones. That's a dated reference, but I think it's applicable here. Now, of course, they have a better record against Wolves, so we're not even going to go over that. Now, should you think that City are the better team in this encounter, you know you can't look beyond Haaland. Now, after that, I would encourage you to get off of Foden, which means he'll probably score a hat-trick in this game. And then I would say Semenyo and what's he called? The right back, Nunes. For Wolves, should you be inspired to choose their players, I would say Mane, Strand Larsen, and the Korean guy. Bournemouth take on Liverpool. Now, Bournemouth and Liverpool both drew last time out, and both will be looking to do better. Liverpool have a better head-to-head record. They have literally won all 5 of their previous encounters, and will be looking to make this a 6th. Now, I don't know what will happen in Europe, so let's see if Ekitike and friends come out of that unscathed. But should everything go well, I would say Florian Wirtz is your first choice, Ekitike, and maybe on the other end, El Krupi, Evan Nilsson, if he can just get his feet well, that would be good. Tavernier is out injured, so forget about him. So maybe Evan Nilsson, Adley, and Krupi. The next day we'll see Brentford take on Nottingham Forest. Now, Brentford are playing a great season, to be honest. This is better than anyone could have ever hoped for. I think they're in 7th or 8th, and they're looking good value for their money. When it comes to head-to-head, it is 1 draw and 2 wins for each side, which means this is perfectly poised. Now, should you believe in Forest, it's quite simple. You have Morgan Gibbs-White. You have, who else? Who would you choose? Hudson-Odoi and Sells, or Ola Aina, depending on if you want to believe in their defense. On the other end, you have Thiago. You have a midfielder like Shada. If he finds his shooting boots because he had lost them against Chelsea, and Collins. Those 3 are the players I'd recommend from Brentford. Crystal Palace versus Chelsea. This is the right time for Chelsea to play against Crystal Palace because Crystal Palace have not been great actually, they're just mirroring my form. It's about 4 or 5 weeks. They've been atrocious. Chelsea, oh my goodness, was so lucky against Brentford. It was just mistakes that led them to score. It wasn't any particular brilliance that they had. And in a way, they're playing the right team because they're similar in the way they're playing right now. Not very well, not encouraging. Now, if you believe in Crystal Palace, you really have Mateta and you have Pino, and that's about it. The defense is not something to believe in right now. Chelsea, on the other hand, you have Neto, you have Palmer, and maybe Chaloba. Or if you're feeling brave, bring back João Pedro if he starts. But also remember they're in the Champions League. So watch out for that as well because European fixtures will affect selection. Newcastle will take on Aston Villa. And this will be a good game because both teams are high up on the table and both teams will be looking to win. Now, in their last 5 games, Newcastle have won 3, drawn 1, and lost 1. So they are slight favorites in this encounter. However, European fixtures and availability of players may affect how things will go. So assuming health, I will say that Watkins, Rogers, and Matikash for Villa, Voltemada, Bruno Guimaraes, and Lewis Hall for Newcastle. Or if not Hall, Thiago. And then we have the marquee game of the game week, which is Arsenal versus Manchester United. A classic. Arsenal failed to take great advantage. They took advantage in that they opened a further 1-point gap, but people expected more. Manchester United have the potential to be party poopers. They will have rested more. Arsenal play midweek. They're playing against Inter Milan as I record this. And so it depends on how things go there. It's hard to challenge on all fronts, and they will be tested in the Inter match, and then they will be tested in the Manchester United game. So Manchester United took advantage of maybe City's fitness levels and beat them, or maybe they're just a better team. And competing fans and Arsenal haters will be hoping for a similar performance. If you believe in Manchester United, Dorgu, Mbeumo, and Bruno Fernandes are the clear favorites. If you believe in Arsenal, you just have to start at the back. You could go either Gabriel, Timber, and Rice, or Rice, Saka, and maybe Gyökeres, or maybe a defender, midfielder, striker, or maybe like a Saka, Rice, Saliba, that combination type thing. I would go into the head-to-head, but it's a new manager, and I don't think head-to-head matters in such situations because we haven't seen Carrick versus Arteta yet. And so let's just see what happens. The last kick of the week, we'll see Everton take on Leeds. The thing with Everton is that I'm just going to have a defender and close my eyes because they're just ridiculous at this point. They just keep exceeding all expectations. Where you think they can't get a clean sheet, they get it. So I'm just going to believe in that. And I'm trying to break my template. My template is trash. I've done nothing for 6 weeks, so I'm doing something different. I'm just going to believe in Everton defense. They've proven to be dependable. So right off the bat, I'm just going to say Pickford, Tarkowski, and maybe Barry or Grealish. On the lead side, Aronson, Dominic Calvert, Lewin, and Rodon. And that will be the game week. When it comes to choosing a captain, West Ham take on Sunderland. There's no clear captain for me in this fixture. Burnley versus Spurs, there's no clear captain for me in this fixture. Brighton versus Fulham, honestly, I could see somebody gambling with Raul or Mr. Harry Wilson. Man City versus Wolves, of course, somebody will more majority of the group will put Haaland. Bournemouth versus Liverpool, Verts would be a good choice. Brentford versus Nottingham Forest, Thiago, Morgan Gibbs-White. Crystal Palace versus Chelsea, I could see Palmer or Neto or Mateta. Newcastle versus Aston Villa, Watkins, Bruno Guimaraes. Arsenal versus Man United, Mbeumo, Rice, Saka, Gabriel. When it comes to the FPL FDR, Arsenal have Manchester United, Leeds, Sunderland, Brentford, and Tottenham. So after the Man United game, things get a little bit lighter. Aston Villa have Newcastle, Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton, and Leeds. It's a set of tricky fixtures. Those are not easy teams to defeat. Bournemouth have Liverpool, Wolves, Aston Villa, Everton, and West Ham. Only Wolves and West Ham seem winnable for me, but also Wolves have been unbeaten, and that can't be ignored. Brentford have Nottingham Forest, Aston Villa, Newcastle, Arsenal, and Brighton. So it seems like the games will increase in difficulty from this point forward. So do we still believe in Thiago? Well, let's see. Brighton have Fulham, Everton, Crystal Palace, Aston Villa, and Brentford. Honestly, this is just straight in the middle. If they win all, that's great. I don't see them losing all, but I could see 3 out of 5. Burnley have Tottenham, Sunderland, West Ham, Crystal Palace, and Chelsea. And Burnley at the bottom, I don't know. They're not finding anything easy, and I think they'll just continue to struggle. Chelsea have Crystal Palace, then they have West Ham, Wolves, Leeds, and Burnley. So, in theory, these are the easiest fixtures of anyone in that they have 3 promoted sides and then West Ham. So, there's a potential for points here if you are with the right players. Crystal Palace have Chelsea, Forest, Brighton, Burnley, and Wolves. If they were in better form, these would have been great fixtures, but these are also fixtures that can help them repair their form. So I'd hold out on them. Everton have Leeds, Brighton, Fulham, Bournemouth, and Man United. Honestly, there's potential for clean sheets, and with Everton players, that's all you're looking for. Fulham have Brighton, Man United, Everton, Man City, and Sunderland. Tricky fixtures, but they have the potential to succeed. Leeds have Everton, Arsenal, Forest, Chelsea, and Villa. Leeds have been tough to beat. I think they'll continue to be a tough team, but I think their run is coming to an end. Liverpool have Bournemouth, Newcastle, Man City, Sunderland, and Nottingham Forest. Tricky fixtures, and I wouldn't have any of their defenders. If you believe in one of the midfielders, that's just it. Just stay there. Man City have Wolves, Spurs, Liverpool, Fulham, and Newcastle. Mixed bag, but they've lost 2 in a row now. I wouldn't have all 5. I know some of you have Gay, Semenyo, Foden, O'Reilly, and Haaland. So I wouldn't encourage you to have that many Man City players. I would say just get a little lighter. Manchester United have Arsenal, Fulham, Tottenham, West Ham, and Everton. Honestly, after the Arsenal game, I think it would be a great buy to just have their players. I'm very impressed with what I saw. And if the new manager bounce is real, I think they can pick up good momentum. Newcastle have Aston Villa, Liverpool, Brentford, Tottenham, and Man City. Oof, these are tough fixtures I'll be getting out of Newcastle. Forest have Brentford, Crystal Palace, Leeds, Wolves, and Liverpool. Let me start again. Brentford, Crystal Palace, Leeds, Wolves, Liverpool. These are decent fixtures and they can get some change in them. Spurs have Burnley, Man City, Man United, Newcastle, Arsenal. Difficult fixtures. Don't get their players. Sunderland have West Ham, Burnley, Arsenal, Liverpool, Fulham. So their fixtures increase in difficulty and then get easier again. So 3 out of those 5 are winnable, and I think they could definitely get a draw against Arsenal and Liverpool. West Ham have Sunderland, Chelsea, Burnley, Man United, and Bournemouth. Only Burnley look like an easy fixture on paper. They're going to really have to do well for Nuno not to get sacked over these next 5 games. And finally, we have Wolves. They play Man City, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Forest, and Crystal Palace. I think it's too tough for them to stay up. They have improved over the last 4 or 5 games. They're unbeaten, but it's too late. I do think they'll be competitive and there won't be pushovers, but I still think they're done. So their games will be entertaining because people have this mindset of who they think they are, but they have evolved. And so it will be entertaining to see how their season ends. So with that, please break the template that you have in your head. Be like Wolves, change the thing that you've been doing into something new, and we'll see you on the pitch. Have a great remainder of your week. Bye-bye.